I'm visiting Bodie State Historic Park, a gold mining ghost town in California, where I find cast iron pieces that are bigger than me and seem to serve no purpose, a cemetery with wooden gravestones, grapes beautifully carved into a headboard, and I found out what a sage grouse was. I didn't realize until I got to Utah how small the landscape makes you feel. You're like, I'm a speck of dust. I feel like there's more sky here. That doesn't make sense. It's the same amount of sky everywhere you go on the planet.
The town boomed back in the late 1800s through the early 1900s, and it's pretty darn amazing how much of the town is still left even after 2 fires. You'll see and be surprised at how much is standing despite the harsh environment out here.
I was just noticing as we're driving down, all the buildings look like what I imagine Hollywood's interpretation of the Old West is. And there's all these wood panel houses. Everything is kind of small and contained.
Jordan, do you see how on the mountains there's gigantic cast shadows that are made by the clouds?
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Everything is just so blue. You can see a major difference in contrast between what the sun is shining on versus the shadows that the clouds are casting. And it's just gorgeous. I love it. It's so interesting to see how just simple everything is. And it just makes me think about what it must have been like to live in this area at the time and just have that simple life where everyone knows each other in the town. And
there's no smartphones?
Yeah, there's no smartphones.
No Netflix?
No Netflix, no nothing. No wall outlets for charging iPads and stuff. Yeah, it just makes me think about a simpler time. It really kind of pulls me out of the modern 2022 lifestyle, even just for a couple of minutes.
The founder of the town didn't actually ever see the town come to fruition, getting supplies before the town ever fully popped up, which is kind of sad.
That's sad. What a bummer for that dude. What was his name?
So his name was Bodie. I can't remember his first name. Is it over there?
W.S. Bodie.
Yeah. Him and his partner were the ones who were mining for gold down in some streams near Mona Lake. Followed it all the way up to here, where they found a vein of gold in the mountain.
When I'm traveling, it's always really hard for me to pick a place to paint. I just always feel like I want to paint everything, which of course is not possible. So it's really hard to narrow it down. Sometimes it's a practical matter where I just really don't like painting in spaces where there are tons of people to gawk at what I'm doing. I really liked this one spot because it was really far away from the main street of town. So I knew I wouldn't be bothered by anybody. This particular building was really interesting to me because you could see the sky through the structure of the building. Most of the ceiling was missing, and so there was this wonderful sense of space where you could feel the inside of the building from the outside, and then feeling like you could see through the building all the way back into the distance. I mean, negative space does not get better than that. Nothing standing upright. Nothing looks neat or measured, and I like seeing all of those diagonals and how they cross over each other. When I'm composing a piece, I always try to maximize any type of diagonal that I can find. And this building is basically nothing but diagonals. Before I came to Bodie, I looked at a lot of images of the park because I wanted to prepare in advance what art supplies I would bring. Oftentimes, I will try to match the art supply with some of the visuals of the place. In Bodie, everything has some version of texture, whether it's the landscape, the wood, even the chairs that have this roughed up surface to them from all the wear and tear over the years. I don't use charcoal pencil that often, but it seemed like a really good tool for Bodie because I could get enough control that I could really map out the entire building But there's also an inherent roughness to the line that you make with charcoal pencils. The first drawing tool that came to me was a bamboo reed pen. These are dip pens that I dipped into acrylic inks using sepia and Van Dyke brown, natural earth tones. What I really like about the bamboo reed pens is that you never know what type of line you're going to get. Sometimes you'll put down a mark and it's just this wonderful, juicy line of ink. Sometimes so much so that you actually have to take a paper towel and dab it. Or sometimes the bamboo reed pen, it barely draws anything. And I really liked how unpredictable that was. It seemed to really match all of the various types of lines that I would find in Bodie. There's so many layers of wood. One piece of wood that goes over another, layers of wood underneath those. The depth is extraordinary. You couldn't ask for more than this in terms of showing depth with the wood. I like using so many different materials because each material has its own special talent that it contributes to the composition. And I felt like this combination of media layering things on top of each other really was a good fit for the way all of the various materials were laying on top of each other in Bodie. First thing I noticed walking around Bodie was that literally none of the buildings are straight, nothing is lined up. Because all the buildings are crooked, you really feel wandering around the town that everything is so precarious. Things feel like they're barely holding themselves together. There's almost a sway and gesture to the way one building leans against another. In a lot of cases, you'll see buildings that almost feel like they're pressing up against each other. I happen to like it when things are not straight. I think it gives the architecture a human quality because it is so flawed. And I don't have to bother with linear perspective because it does not exist here. I love my erasers, but I do really like this pen pastel sponge for smearing and smudging the pigment from the charcoal pencil all over the page. And I love my eraser stick because it's so good at pulling out pretty dramatic areas of highlight, but I can still get quite a bit of detail. What I notice when I get up close to each of the buildings is that, wow, nails are what's holding this entire town together. The nails themselves feel like they have their own form of expression. You have some nails that are really jutting out and almost in your face. There are some nails that seem to immerse themselves into the texture of the buildings. And so many nails that are crooked and bent and turned in all different types of directions. I feel like everything in Bodie is either peeling or bending or warping in some direction. You see that in the planks of wood, especially in some of the interiors where pieces of wallpaper are peeling off the surface. Even the metal sheets are bent and almost pulling themselves off of the edge of the buildings. There's a certain cohesion to the color scheme of Bodie simply because the materials that you see here between the wood, the metal, the brick, they're all fairly similar. And I was actually really happy to see that the town has this wonderful contrast of cool colors in the bluish toned metal roofs, but then these really bright, intense burnt siennas that you find in a lot of the wood and also in the brick. I feel like my drawing came out really creepy looking, which I did not set out to do. And when it comes to ghost towns, it seems like creepy would be a really good match. But that wasn't the case for me at Bodie. What I found there was this really quiet stillness that really gave me the space to slow down and look much more carefully. I'll remember those pieces of cast iron that seemed to leave a trail throughout the town, and those plates left out on the dining room table.
We're shopping together.
What's up, people?
We're getting avocados.
Ice in my veins, I've been driving this train. Years in this lane, there's no stopping this flame. Cause I came to the game and I changed it to play how I like, rearranged it.